Okay. So it's what day is it? It's March like 17th.
Yes.
And this is a women's podcast. Ella here with Em Dee. And we're finally getting to get this done. We've been trying to coordinate this for what, like a month? And now that COVID has made everybody stay home, we have all this time.
Yay.
Yay! So, um, first, I just wanted to say thank you. And I wanted to also let you know that um, you can say whatever you need to say. This is your platform to use as you need, on top of me just asking you a few questions. So, if you want to just kind of introduce yourself and let us know about how you got or found your way into feminism.
Yeah. Well, I go by Em Dee. But everyone's welcome to call me Emily or Emmy. I don't mind. Um, and I originally got into it because after college, I decided to, this was before Me Too and everything. I just decided to speak up about some things that I had experienced in college, including like sexual assault and stuff. And I was kind of discouraged by the administration when I first spoke up, and I had a few people supporting me, but I also had a big backlash. I sort of spoke up publicly on Facebook, and then to a few of my friends and
Yeah.
my family, um, and but because of the backlash, I was too kind of discouraged from like calling the cops or anything legal. So I was kind of lost, just feeling really like alone and confused. And so I started just Googling things, like, what happens if I like speak up? And, that's when I kind of discovered like, I actually discovered everydayfeminism.com because
Okay.
yeah, I know. They did a lot of articles about like sexual assault in colleges and women not being believed, and that's kind of what reeled me in.
Okay.
And then of course they had all their other articles, the sort of neoliberal SJW transgender stuff, and so I kind of got a little indoctrinated into that. And I was operating as an SJW for a few months, and that's actually when I started a YouTube channel. It's my old channel; it's gone now. That was in like 2016. But I kept getting into the gender stuff, and I was just sort of bopping around, being like a cool liberal girl. But then I kind of started having issues with some of the philosophy in there, obviously. And then I think Terry Strange popped up. I started listening to her. Then from there, I got into like gender critical stuff, and that's kind of where I got into radical feminism. And I was pretty staunch radical feminist. I still like, believe. I mean, a lot of my analysis is based on that framework, like the main tenets of radical
Hmm.
feminism. I just don't
Hmm.
like to identify any, I think a lot of people are getting to that point. But, and then, I got rid of my channel, started, and then I don't know, more time passed. And I started a new channel, which is the Em Dee channel. That's not there right now. And I started getting comments from like MGTOWs and Manosphere men, as well as trans activists. And I'd always kind of heard about like the red pill stuff. I just never really looked into it. I had a boyfriend at one point that was into like Alex Jones and red pill stuff. And I'm curious. I'm insatiably curious, and I have to explore everything. And like I decided to just kind of like do a little black ops mission and go in on the Manosphere. I got, in personal contact with a couple of them and just see what it was all about. And it's pretty much just the same old sexism inflated on the internet. Like
Right.
typical,
So
you know.
that's how you ended up, is you didn't like necessarily go looking for it. They found you initially, you were saying?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
And why were they, why are MGTOW, why are red pills, why are these men looking for feminist channels?
It's just they're hunting. They literally use the word hunting. And it's also for silencing, you know. I remember watching Man Cheese. I know she used to debunk them a lot, and she would have her channel down all the time, and she'd have to make a new channel. And it's, you know, they're literally just angry little boys. I mean, they have the emotional intelligence of like 7-year-olds. In fact, that might be an insult to 7-year-olds, you know. Like, um it's they just don't, they're so dominant with their narrative. Like any little threat to their ego or their argument, you know, they're just pissed off. And you know, I think, I don't know if most of them are just, it's like an ego thing, but they also like, I feel like some of them think what they think is bullshit. They just kind of hate women. And I think there's something like about these more radical feminist channels that really poke holes in all their bullshit arguments, that like pisses them off. And so that's like a way for them to manifest their hatred of women. I get
Mhm.
it. That's like kind of, you know, I was there in a long time, so I've psychoanalyzed this quite a bit. But and then some of them I think genuinely believe, they think that like feminism is the downfall of society. And I don't know, I'm sure some of them feel like heroes, but it's like, it's really petty. It's really, it's, yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so you said you these guys are, they hunt feminist channels for the sake of shutting them down, like they do Man Cheese, right? So um that, is that an attempt to like thwart like feminism in general, like disprove their actions, like what's
Yeah.
uh
Yeah, that, and they also want to convert. Um that was something I ran in. I forgot to mention that they also want to convert. um I think it's kind of a sexual thing for some of them, where like they want to like dominate feminists. But it's like a, they want to convert them to the red pill, they want to convert them to the manosphere. That's like another tactic, but it's also to silence them, shut them down. And it's like a little like petty like internet war that they're trying to carve out, I guess.
do you think that silencing can, that act of like trying to silence the feminists on the internet is also a way of trying to kind of like deny the realities of, male violence IRL?
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. And I think for a lot of them, like as I got to know a lot of the, and it isn't just men in the manosphere, there's like, you know, women in there too, and kids, unfortunately. But
Wow.
it's like a lot of them are very isolated. They don't have a lot of, like a lot of them don't have, like they aren't employed. Maybe they work from home or don't work at all, or they've like lost custody of their kids, which you know, that stuff gets complicated. But I noticed they're very isolated, so it's almost like they don't have attachments, they don't have territory, you could say, like in the real world. So this is kind of, they want to make this their domain.
Okay.
Um, so there's that element, but I do think that you know, if you talk to them about IRL feminism, like they'll say it's winning, you know, like it's dominating, like it's, you know. And then of course if you bring up male violence, they'll say, well, there's women's shelters, you know. And they'll bring up the Violence Against Women Act, which I think was like up for repeal or something like that. So yeah, that's kind of where they're coming from most of them that I talk to.
What do you think about like is it like a cult, like a hive mind kind of
Absolutely. They say they don't make original statements. Every single one of them says the exact same phrases. They have the exact same rhetoric, and they just regurgitate. My Discord is gone now, but I was making a list of all the phrases that they say, because they literally all say, and they treat you exactly, at least they treated me exactly the same way every time I engaged with one. on a personal level, it was the same routine every single time. And yeah, just whatever, they just say the same things like, hypergamy and girls 18 to 24, they're all saying the same thing. And you can tell they're on a rhetorical loop.
Yeah.
It's pretty, I mean, this is one reason why I
Right.
was so upset. It's just like talking to so many of them. It's like, it's maddening to talk to so many different people and they say the same things. It's like you're in a mad world, like of just robots. Like, it's definitely groupthink, definitely hive mind for sure. Absolutely.
It's funny because I was speaking to some other YouTubers, and they were using Jordan Peterson sayings like, clean your room, and um, this idea of like individualism. And it's funny because it's just two like points of like, I don't really understand like why does like the Manosphere like obsess over Jordan Peterson, but also like they do obsess over him like that. You know what I mean? They all do repeat his sayings like that hive mind idea. So like it makes sense, but like what is the draw? What's the fascination? I don't really know. Do you know?
I've actually, yeah, I've noticed that too. I've thought about this for a minute. So yeah, it's like it's Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan. There's a couple other guys that they bring up. They'll bring up Bill Hicks and George Carlin a lot, which I mean, I'm not saying they're all wrong, but I mean, they have their guys, right? And Bill Burr, kind of. Um, and I would say like something else I noticed about a lot of them is they don't. They feel very proud of sort of their basic life skills. And I mean, we're talking about like 40 something men who think they're like the champion of the world because they can cook a steak, yeah, right. Like, or they can make their bed. Right. So I think that's like, there's a level of immaturity that I think Jordan Peterson appeals to. Cause I mean, to them, like cleaning your room is like an epiphany to them,
Right.
like I noticed that. And I think that's, something about Jordan Peterson. It's like, because he literally just said, like, clean your room. And he's like, everything he says about psychology is like Psych 101. Like, any freshman psych student could tell you the same damn thing. Like, so I think, and a lot of them are against education, like, they're against schooling and stuff like that. So I think there's just like a lack of, it really is like a lack of emotional intelligence, a lack of life skills. So they're just, this is like a big deal to them because like I don't know. I think some of them have definitely been babied a lot of their lives, especially the
Mm-hmm.
ones like still living at home. That's
Oh,
definitely noticeable. Um, so it's just, yeah, it's just that simple. Like they just like aren't that intelligent. I mean, in certain ways, and it's really disheartening. But
okay. So also, let's expand on Jordan Peterson. Do you think that he is actually this basic, and that these like really really basic statements and concepts that he tries to like put forth as like, fantastical and amazing, do you think he's doing it, and do you think he's using their stupidity against them so that he can propel his life and his career and make money off of them? Or do you think he genuinely believes that like he is like god of the manosphere?
yeah, I would say if I had to guess, because honestly, like I've been so like against Jordan Peterson for so long, I just like haven't even really given him the time of day.
Mm,
But I mean, I've looked into him a little bit, but I think he started out genuine, maybe is my guess, and then he found this niche and he's exploiting it now. That's what I would say happened, from
that's
what I
the thing, like
know. Yeah.
I feel like he's exploiting them, right? And
Yeah.
a big part of like okay, feminism is like we want to support and make sure that other women are not exploited and used. And men's rights is like based on like exploiting everybody to get what you want. and then like they get mad because there's no resources for these men. But like, how do you expect to create resources when you like idolize men who want to use and abuse you? I don't, it's so weird. Like, and then they blame women for it because
Yeah,
of their own like toxic cycle within, you know, men.
that is, I got involved, I'd say last May is when it started. So this has been a little less than a year. So I've had a lot of observation. That was a merry-go-round that I was on, is I would listen to them, listen to their arguments, about their all their problems and their lack of resources. And they would always just, it always come down to blaming women. And like, normally they end up blaming like bad online dates that they had. Like it normally ends up they're like, well, I was on Tinder and like all these girls, like I would take them out to dinner and buy them dinner, and they wouldn't want to go out with me anymore, like basically getting rejected like everyone gets rejected. Like, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, they just, I've heard them and seen them jump, from one point to women, like a huge logical leap, because
Mhm.
that's just their mind frame is how to blame everything on women. They will go through insane mental gymnastics to do that, and it doesn't matter how many times you point at, males being in power. The only time they give males credit is when it's like something innovative or something, something progressive. And then when you say, well, these men in power are also responsible for this, they somehow find a way to blame that on not women in power, but like average everyday women. That's
Yeah.
like, they don't even normally go after, like, I mean, they'll complain about powerful women, but they always end up seemingly complaining about their ex-girlfriends or something,
Right.
Yeah.
Oh well.
And their ex-girlfriends didn't even, they either got rejected or like, the girlfriend had an annoying laugh. It's nothing that's a real bad thing. I think the worst thing I've heard is like cheating, but it's just, and it's, then they complain about getting divorced and stuff, but it's like, you're clearly, yeah, I mean, all these men are emotionally abusive. It becomes very apparent, at the very least, emotionally and psychologically abusive. Like, that becomes very apparent right away. And so it's like, well, I can see why you had all these women troubles, um, is kind of how I look at that.
So another question about just men in general, and well, abusive men. Why do you think, I don't know if you'll have the answer to this, but the men that like, it seems like the Manosphere are really like centered, and their thought revolves around this like, what's it called? This like idea of this like perfect American dream family. Like, why are they so determined to have this relationship with this imaginary woman as opposed to like fulfilling themselves in their own lives before they go and try to find a woman to ruin?
Yeah. Definitely movies and television. Um, like they're definitely, I mean, I couldn't help, I mean, they're always talking about the 50s. Like that comes up all the time. And they aren't talking about like the real 50s. They're talking about television, like Leave It to Beaver. Like they
Yeah.
are stuck. They're literally brainwashed by television, all those shows and all those movies. That's another thing. If you talk to them long enough, when they describe, like, that they will often out of nowhere start describing their perfect woman. And it's always this sort of soulless, like even June Cleaver had a personality on, but they just leave that out. It's literally like, I want a woman with these specific physical qualifications who cleans and cooks and does whatever I say, like that's, and then, they want you to dress up and look a certain way. And some of them want a goth girl and some of them want like a 50s housewife looking, it's all fantasy. And certainly a lot of it's influenced by pornography as well. That's just obvious after talking to so many of them and witnessing them for so long. They're just literally living in TV land. They live by the screens, which I think a lot of them being isolated, that's all they see, is just what's on the screens. And that's where they get that fantasy, because it reminds me of being a little girl. When I was a girl and I used to like have we'd go to sleepovers and like, what's your perfect man? But I grew out of that, obviously. But I mean, they never did. They never grew out of it. And so we've got 50-year-old men still waiting for some, 1950s housewife with absolutely no experience, no personality, but the cooking and cleaning skills of like a 40-year-old,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're looking for moms.
Yeah.
That they can have sex with.
Yeah, but it's the Madonna whore mom. With absolutely, you never talk back, you never have emotion, you never have negative emotions, you're always pleasant, always smiling, always obedient, there's no love. They don't talk about love, they don't talk about connection, they don't talk about intimacy. It's just this kind of really creepy
ship and like
black and white. Yeah, it's a very black and white, creepy movie like fantasy. And they're always looking for like really feminine women. I hate gender, but like just any woman who fits that mold. And then of course no woman, no matter how quote unquote feminine, is going to fit that mold, because women have souls and personalities, and they can't stand that. So
right.
Even if they found their perfect woman, it still wouldn't be good enough. That's it. So I mean, they just don't know. They don't know what a real relationship is. They don't know what normal human intimacy and attachment is. They just don't understand that. They have no concept of that.
Well, it doesn't seem to even regardless of concept, it seems like it's not even like within their realm of like reality. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's not even a thing that they need to experience or commit to, or like a woman is just, oh, that's what I wanted to say. They think I used to hear the term femoid.
Yeah.
When I back in the when I first started looking into incels, when that guy who had the van ran over all those people in Toronto.
Yeah.
And then you were just saying how, they just want the woman to cook, clean, smile, and, have sex with them. And they literally see the woman as like an oid, like a less than, like a subhuman. You know what I mean? Like they're sub male, like they're femoid. They're not a female. And it's just, why? Where does that come from, that they believe that we are less than them?
It's like Stepford Wives type stuff. I mean, I'm sorry, they always refer back to movies and television. Like when I would talk with them, they always refer back to television shows and like reality. They don't, the only real life examples they use are like short Tinder dates they had,
Mm-hmm.
And they definitely, I would say they get it, and definitely from porn. That's noticeable in porn for anyone who's ever watched it enough. And a lot of them don't seem to have a lot of interaction with real life women.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them have been isolated, then a lot of them complain about like being rejected in high school, and they just I don't know, they get it. I think they definitely get it from movies, TV, pornography, and just I mean, they're really narcissistic in that way. They just live in this fantasy land, and it's a really inhuman, warped view of reality that just, it doesn't exist, and they can't let go of that, and they can't grow out of it. So that's pretty much, I mean, that's all I could conclude from like just talking. All they're all about the same. They all end up being more or less having the same kind of mind frame. So
Mhm.
yeah.
You mentioned narcissism. Do you find that narcissism is like at a higher level within the manosphere men, or just kind of like, regular amongst regular men?
Oh, it's way higher. It's way higher. I mean, that's the crux of like a narcissistic mentality is living in this fantasy world, and then like everyone's a pawn to you, right? So like all women are pawns. And I mean, if you get deep, I mean, a lot of psychologists will point out like, yeah, like most narcissistic men are also misogynistic, but it all feeds into the fantasy world that they live in, this ideal world that they live in. And when you don't fit into that, they get very angry or very cross. Um and I mean, I've never seen people so manipulative. I mean, they're out here like hunting feminists. They don't, they'll dox people, they'll defame people. They have a whole like meme army to make degrading memes about people. Like it's like kicking a hornet's nest, like I mean, they have everything. They have the flying monkeys, the people that support them no matter what they do.
The hunt
Like
stock accounts.
yeah, exactly. Like um and there's a lot of women in there too. But there's, I mean, they have like women in the manosphere, like, oh, you women, you have to go through all these processes to get clout, in the manosphere and stuff like that. And
Oh,
they're some of the most petty, and everything's, a lot of it's online, and it just, all that makes it really petty to me.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of men, even men who, your average man is going to look at these guys and be like, oh yeah, they're complete assholes. It doesn't seem normal, even though I've had problems with men out here, but they're the worst for sure. Um,
We're at the bottom of the barrel.
yeah.
Um, Two other questions that I just thought of. So remember we're talking about how these guys really revert back to media and like what they've seen on TV, and just kind of like not real life examples. We're always like, I've always been like told as a girl that like, oh, why do you think you have to be so skinny? Why do you think you have to be pretty? Why do you think you have to conform? And why did you think you had to have a kid and have a family and get married? Why did you do all these things if like it's not really what you ever wanted? And it's like, well, because the TV told me to, like indirectly, like the TV, the magazines, the movies, like the like societal influence, like that's what I learned growing up, is that this is what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to be pretty. I was supposed to be quiet. I was supposed to just find a guy and have his kid and marry him and do everything that way, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you're saying that like these guys are like so highly influenced by media, and it's like, well, how come society is not realizing how heavily we are influenced by this, and that it's important? Like, why are we missing that?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of people out like in the real world like that do realize that, and they're just, kind of living their lives. And then there's some people that are just way too busy, just with work and kids and their lives too. Um, but for a lot of these guys, I mean, it kind of goes back to, well, they reinforce each other, because you will get degraded for everything in that community. Like if you're single, you don't have kids at a certain age, I mean, everything. Um, but also I think this, again, it goes back to a lot of them being kind of isolated. So they've sort of created their own echo chamber, their own bubble. And even some of them do realize how manipulative, like they will, if you mention how manipulative like advertising is or media is, like they'll say, oh yeah, but then they kind of just, they go right back. It's like they don't, it's, they choose not to have that kind of self-awareness and self-evaluation. Um, and they just, I don't know, they don't think, I think some of them don't think it's that big of a deal, or they think they're beyond it, but they're not, like there's just a lack of, and there's not really an incentive because they've, these Manosphere channels, I mean, some of them have like hundreds of thousands of subscribers. A lot of them just have a few thousands, but that's still enough of a pool of people, and they're still making enough money in some cases, where they just reinforce each other. There's no incentive for them to kind of pop out of that bubble. And they truly believe, they really think the 50s was like that, you know? I mean, you can look at statistics and stuff, but like, I mean, I have, older parents. I met my grandparents. Like, I know that that wasn't total reality, right? Like, I mean, and they don't have a concept of that, like they just, it's all movies and TV and, Jordan Peterson says this, or, because a lot of these guys that they look up to talk about the golden age of the, they talk about like people usually get married at this age, they just eat all that shit up. They don't have any sense of outliers or, not everyone was like that. They don't think like that. Because if they did, it would probably crumble all of their perspectives. Yeah. Because, their whole thing right now is, feminism is the downfall of society, and it was all ruined in the 60s because of, the feminists of the 60s. And so it's their touchstone. So it's kind of a basis. This fantasy they live in is kind of a basis for everything they argue, so, it's probably going to be hard for them to kind of shake out of that.
That is creepy. That is weird. Like living on a surface level, like piece of reality, and then kind of like pretending that it is a certain way because you don't want to be self-introspective. So crazy.
Yeah, you see like 50-year-old men like that. Like you've been living your whole life like that.
Do you know all the groups? Like what are all the, I guess, subgroups within the manosphere?
Yeah, well, incels obviously involuntarily celibate. So you can't get laid. There's the MGTOWs, which men going their own way. So that's men like, they're supposed to not associate with women. There's like MGTOW monk, which is mean you just totally no interaction with women at all. I don't think a lot of MGTOWs are actually like MGTOW, like they still associate with women and date them and stuff. So like you choose not to date women. They have their little pill fact. There's purple pill, which is like, the red pill stuff, but you're living kind of blue pill, which is like, whatever. That's like, you're kind of a normie mixed with like red pill knowledge, which is just, they're crazy. I'm sorry, they're so crazy. Like,
I love it. I want to know. This is what I was asking. It's great.
So like, yeah, just talking about it though, like saying it out loud just makes it
sound weird. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then I think another category, I mean, there's also just like men bopping around. Like some of them are married and have kids, and or they're just kind of bopping around, and so they just say they're red pill, or they're just manosphere, or they're just anti-feminist. But I would say really it's just like incels, MGTOWs, and then a bunch of really sexist men, who say they're red pill,
They call themselves manosphere. It's their excuse.
Yeah.
It's their what do you call that? It's their cloak. So yeah, their way to like shield their inexplicable hatred of feminism is to, blame feminism for all the problems.
Yeah. Well, sometimes red pill men will come along and they'll be like, not all red pill men are like that. And then
oh my God.
Yeah. And then they'll be like, because red pill also covers, like, there's another part of red pill that's like about politics and the media. But, then there's the red pill that's like, just like this weird youth obsessed with fertility, like gross, like dehumanizing, woman hating shit, which is mostly what they're talking about half the time. So yeah, I mean, I don't think they don't really, I mean, if they're out on YouTube, they're not really trying to hide themselves. They just might be like, well, not all, let me explain to you why I'm red pill. And, then, yeah, I mean, they're just kind of out and about as they are.
I've had some MGTOWs like comment on my videos, just come along and say, hey, like, not all MGTOWs are like bad MGTOWs. And I'm like, okay, cool. But like, I mean, you're saying like men going their own way. And like, I find that there's a disconnect. I feel like those men are not actually going their own way, because a lot of them, it's like they just don't want to be in relationships with women, but they still want to sleep with them.
Oh no, they want that. They just like they hate women, and so they're living in this little limbo where they're denying the relationship thing. They want to have sex. But they're denying that. So that comes out, I mean, they hate women. It's just like this weird purgatory they put themselves in. And I mean, yeah, I've seen some like if a guy has MGTOW in his username, then he's not a real MGTOW. I mean, they say all the same things any other like, I mean, I would call this like a fundamentalist group or something. They're kind of like, they're very extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And, so they say all those little things like we're in, not all like that. I mean, if a man was really going his own way, like I don't think he'd be sitting there making videos about women and the downfall of society. Like he'd probably just be showing off his lifestyle. So, you know, I don't, they're crazy. They're crazy. They're
So
absolutely
I
nuts
guess
up.
like it's now that you've been through the ins and outs of it, and you've pretty much learned everything that you're gonna learn, you've decided to make your exit from the Manosphere and start fresh with your new goals, new career.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to have my channel back because I would like to continue to speak up about maybe just like more nuanced points or nuanced observations I have about sexism in everyday life because I'm just noticing things that I feel like don't get talked about as much. Because, I mean, I'm there with all the transgender stuff, but that's not what I'm dealing with, what my friends are dealing with, and just stuff I dealt with in college. But yeah, I mean, I hopefully I can still go to Mexico despite the virus. I want to travel this year, and yeah, I'm really excited about my new job. But I mean, I had to leave. I had to leave the Manosphere because I was getting stalked and doxxed, and it was getting scary. I mean, there's scary people in there. They will come find you. They will. They're the people who SWAT houses. They're the people who find out where you work and call your workplace and one guy was like accusing me of all kinds of heinous things. um so I had to get out of there. I mean, I talked to a lawyer, but it's when it's all online mostly. I mean, the justice system is just like, well, we don't know what we can do.
It's a big clusterfuck online. Okay, you know what I think you should do? I think you should just start a wholly new channel, because if you went back to that old channel, like, I bet you half your subscribers are Manosphere like trolls, right? So you would never be able to get away from them. I think you should start an entirely new channel, and you can transfer content from like your old channel to this new channel. And I think you should start fresh. And if you ever wanted to, you could guest spot on a woman's podcast, or you know what, like you could start building up your content with us as well if you wanted to. I would love to have you on like all the time if you wanted to. So I think, yeah, I think you should do that. I think you should start completely fresh, and don't put up any content with any hashtags that have anything to do with Manosphere so that it doesn't draw them to you.
Yeah.
Then, you know what I mean? Just like, I think that you need to find a way to express yourself without them finding you, right? And going back to your old channel is, they're just going to find you.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had the majority of my subscribers, I think about like 350. So yeah, I guess that's about half of them then. I mean, I would say most of my subscribers are probably neutrals and feminists, and then about like 150 of them, like, I don't know, came from the manosphere part of things. I just like, I love tearing them apart though, because they're so easy. Like, and they just say so much crazy bullshit, and they're indoctrinating young men all the time. But yeah, I mean, I would like to start a new channel. It's just that, you know, I started to talk about this kind of stuff and to kind of speak up about, you know, what's happening online, because I know that the resources that normally would help women in like a local community, you know, aren't really equipped yet. They don't really, a lot of them don't understand this stuff for a lot of, and then there's a lot of young women. I mean, you know, our whole lives are on the internet, you know, and a lot of our socialization is here, and it means something now as far as job and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I would imagine I'd have to start a new channel, because of course they're going to find me. I mean, even when I try to make a deal with this one in particular, you know, people were still trolling me. Although I think maybe he was making sock puppet accounts now, because he likes to stalk me a lot and find me in different places. It's kind of scary. But yeah, I mean, I would love to. I want to do that. So yeah, I'll just start a new channel. Probably, I don't know, maybe there's some way I can salvage the old one if I stay hidden long enough.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
I think after a period of time, you could probably resurface with that channel, but I don't think it would be for like a few years. But like I said, there is a way to start a new channel with your, with the, and not necessarily link it to this channel, but you can transfer your videos from that channel to this new channel if you
Yeah,
want. Like, you could have your stuff moved over. It's just a matter of like, yeah, having your own, not having to give up what was yours, right?
yeah, but I want the same name.
Oh, I'm sure you could probably do, like, I think there's like a lot of YouTube channels that have the same YouTube, but you would have to just make a different URL, like a different custom URL after a while. Like, you could still have Em Dee, but do you have a custom URL right now?
I think so. I don't know. I was gonna. Ooh, sorry, I dropped my mic.
That's okay.
Yeah, I was gonna just wait a while, and just let some time pass. I might do that. If anything, like I want to test it, like my old channel, and see what happens, like just
Yeah.
for like a minute. Um, and then if not, then I'll start a new channel. I think as long as I block all of them, like if I block the main people again, they'll get tired. And then I don't use the hashtags. I probably can't talk about the manosphere for like a couple years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, but I mean, right now I'm just trying to like just stay off like having a channel for a while and let some time pass.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, that's why you can always guest spot here. Like I said, you can get your fix with us if you want.
yeah, I really appreciate it. And I like talking to you, so.
Yay. Do you have anything else? Do you have anything else that you want to discuss? Is there any other like topics that you want to bring up? And
Well, I've been watching Megan Murphy.
okay,
And
yeah.
yeah, and she was talking to what's his face, Benjamin somebody. Have you seen those?
Yeah, Benjamin Boyce. Ben, he hates it when he hates it when people call him Ben, and I like in his comments one time, I guess I called him Ben. And he then like subsequently the day after he like posted a video like complaining like that he doesn't like when people call him Ben for like 30 seconds. Like, don't call me Ben. um, it was funny. But anyways, yeah. Ben Boyce. What part were you intrigued by?
Well, it's like, I mean, I love Megan Murphy. I've been reading her for years, and
Mhm.
I of course am always relieved to see like, as I hate to say it, but I'm always relieved to see like a man like who kind of gets it and is discussing things.
Mhm.
But one thing that and this is really just a source of frustration for me, um, like because Megan Murphy does it, and I get where she's coming from. She's more of a public figure, but a lot of people do this where, she's doing a thing where she's discussing with a lot of different people with different viewpoints, which is fine. That's a good thing. It's just I sometimes when I'm listening to her, and I was listening to Benjamin, like I I don't know, like I sometimes you just have been listening to people so long. I think I left a comment like this on her channel one time, like where you just heard the same talking points over and over again,
Yeah.
like talking about transgender issues or talking about like sexism in the workplace or something like that. And
Yeah.
you hear like a counter argument to like, well, yeah, it's like that for women, but what about when women do this? I don't remember exactly what Benjamin said. I think he said something about like Megan showing like a lack of empathy. They were talking about compartmentalizing emotions and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, and I've just people rephrase them differently, but it's like sometimes I get sick of like hearing the same talking points over and over, and then sometimes I hear talking points that I'm like, that just seems like a stretch, or like a non sequitur. Like it doesn't seem that relevant
Mhm.
or that important. And there's kind of this frustration because I'm seeing, these issues that I think could be rather quickly and easily resolved. But people are kind of running around with these like different ideas in their head that aren't really getting to the point. I would say that's probably in particular with like transgender stuff, just like, well, should we put kids on puberty blockers? If they're like, well, of course not. Like that seems
Yeah.
like a no-brainer. Why is that a discussion? It's kind of that's where I get like frustrated. Uh,
Mhm.
but I don't know, she doesn't really do that. But I mean, just I don't know. Sometimes I get frustrated listening to some people because they're sort of. I mean, it is a kind of like towing the line. Um, and I think it's important to listen to other people's point of view. But when like you're calling something nuanced, but like I've heard the same thing like from a bunch of other people, like how like and
Yeah.
then this bigger issue. And it's like, well, how many kids need to be affected before we finally like put our foot down or like make a decision, Like it's really frustrating.
When are we going to be like actually solution driven as opposed to just like dancing around the issues and making light of the issues and talking about the issues, but like when are we going to fix the problem? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And yeah, you're right. I do feel like that's a lot of what's the conversations that are happening right now are just kind of like, meh, well, this is kind of the world right now, so like, do you agree with me or do you agree with them? But like, there's no like, what do we do about it? Like, let's take the next step. Who do we talk to? Who do we call? What do we like? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's no movement.
I
There's
think
no
it takes
sound.
a
Yeah.
while. It takes a while for people to get the courage, I think. It wasn't until recently, like I was out, um, just I met some people, they're locals around here. One's like a nurse practitioner. So they're kind of in the community, like involved and stuff. And they were talking about like transgenderism and kids and stuff. And unfortunately, the nurse practitioner was like, yeah, if they feel like a girl, then yeah, we do the whole thing. And then the two guys she was with were like, no, that's wrong, and they sort of said that outright. And so it was kind of encouraging to see like an actual community, like someone in my community in real life, like be able to just kind of speak outright like that, where I feel like I don't know if this was because I was in Chicago or something, but it was kind of like that where I live now. Like when, if you even questioned the gender narrative, it was like, you were Satan.
Yeah.
And now it seems to be kind of cooling down, and I think people are finally feeling a little safer, and people are being a little more civil when it comes to people disagreeing with the gender stuff. So, but it's like so slow, and I'm just thinking about like all the kids, even if it's just a few, like who have, because of this trend, because of this like weird not, I mean, this is like the craziest thing I've ever seen happen, like politically and socially in my entire lifetime.
Mhm.
Like, I think anyone's lifetime, really. Like, I don't, this was blindsiding, because it's so obviously wrong. It's
Yep.
so apparently wrong, like just in your face wrong. And it's insane that like doctors, nurses, like would actually go along with it. Like, it's insane to me. It's terrifying, actually. It's like, well, should I even go to the doctor anymore? Because what it like is it run by lunatics now, or like what? Because I just can't believe like grown like adults who are older than me, more experienced than me, like can't see how obviously wrong it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, that's this. I mean, twofold. That's the influence of big pharma and capitalism and the media, right? Like we're all like, okay, I used to go to the doctors a lot. I used to get sick a lot. I used to have chest infections a lot. And ever since I stopped going to the doctors and stopped getting antibiotics, I have a lot less infections.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? And like
Oh,
when I
yeah.
do get sick, I totally get better without taking any antibiotics. But like I used to be on antibiotics like 4 or 5 times a year. That's not normal,
No.
right? But the
Yeah.
doctor will keep prescribing you this medicine because they're going to keep making money.
Yeah.
And we just need to see that like doctors are, working for capitalist corporations just like all the other, you know, white collar workers.
Yeah. It's like most of them are like that, and then every now and then you can get lucky with one who's not like that.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean,
It's the
those
same
ones
with
are
therapists
natural.
and
Those ones are
psychologists,
being killed.
actually. Like I found that psychologists and therapists, their thing, since they don't prescribe meds, their thing is like conformity.
Hmm.
If you go in and you're like a single childless woman, like over the age of 23, probably, like they like that's a thing to them, that's like how they sort of judge where you're at in life, is like, are you married, do you have a long-term relationship? And I can see I've known that for a long time, but it's just like that's like one of the issues I've run into with like mental health professionals, is being single over a certain age, which I'm just flabbergasted by. And you notice it because they ask you and then they start treating you differently. But also just like, if they'll ask you other questions, I mean, not all of them. Definitely, I mean, it's probably easier to find like a helpful therapist or psychologist for sure. But I mean, it's like they want you to conform to some kind of standard, which probably is like, get married, have kids, you know, and then now like work at a certain kind of job at a certain age. Just that's over like 10 years of going um and trying out, like shopping around. But I mean, and if you can't conform, then they send you on to the psychiatrist to get pills.
Yeah,
um so I mean, that's something I've noticed, but that's more like a personal thing. I've talked to some other people about it, but I mean, that's historical though. I mean, those fields, maybe not medically, but definitely in psychiatry, that's, conformity is like historically what they've been trying to do when
yeah,
they see patients. If you study the history of it, I mean, you can't ignore that. But they certainly love to talk about how reformed they are, if you try to bring it up. Like,
yeah,
I mean, it's something, but I mean, it's scary. It's scary. It seems like, because I mean, if something happens to you, I mean, obviously everyone is going to be like, well, go see a counselor, go to the police, go to a doctor. And then you get to those resources, and they're not always, not only are
help.
they not helpful, but they're harmful, or they make
Yeah.
it worse. Yeah.
No, I totally understand that. It took me well, all my life, like up until this year, till I was like 35, to find the right psychiatrist. Like I was seeing therapists, psychotherapists, like counselors, like psychiatrists, psychologists, like every type of therapist, counselor that you could speak to, and every different kind of like talk therapy and like art therapy and like all the everything, and nothing ever really worked. And nobody ever really figured out what was wrong with, like, people said, oh, she has anxiety and she's, suffered a depressive episode. And it's like, okay, but why? There's more. Like, why aren't we figuring that out? How come we're not talking about that? Like, this one psychologist was like, "Hey, you need to unpack your bags." And I'm like, okay, can you, what does that mean? You know what I mean? So like it took to like 35 years and really doing a lot of self-diagnosis and a lot of research of my own symptoms, to figure out that I needed to go to my family doctor and tell her, look, I know that these are my symptoms, blah, 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 blah. And if these are my symptoms, then these are my possible, um, you know, traumas or mental illnesses that I need to deal with, or learning disabilities. So like refer me to the person who's going to deal with this for me. And so that's how I got referred to the psychiatrist that I'm with now. But like, yeah, it's hard to like say, oh yeah, go to therapy about your problem, because like you don't know if that person that you're going to is actually going to be able to help you, or if they're going to be able to even implement something that could propel you forward even in any way, or even maybe refer you to the right person. It could be completely detrimental what they're doing to you, because talk therapy for me is honestly re-traumatizing. Like, it doesn't make things better for me. It just makes me feel bad again, and I just relive it. But like I need what I learned what I need is cognitive behavioral therapy. I need to be able to change my thoughts, because um they're so negative. Like everything is such a, like everything. I am instantly have negative thoughts because of everything that I've endured because of my CPTSD now, and like everything, right? So like I figured out what I need to do to treat it, but like not everybody can do that, right? And we're not taught it in schools. It's not, like our families don't teach us this thing. Like a lot of families are like, mental illness, don't say you're mental, don't say you're depressed, and like, oh, you better not take any medication because that's weird. And like a lot of families are a lot hush hush. So like, where do you learn about this, right? Like you can't depend on the medical association, and you can't depend on your family, and you can't depend on the school. So like it's really hard. Yeah, it's really difficult to get
That's
the right kind of mental health treatment.
that's something that really gets to me, and I wasn't really aware of for a long time, because my mom was a childhood psychologist, and she was really empathetic. Like she had
Mm-hmm.
the deepest well of ability to emotionally support someone, and also really intelligent. And so I had her like all through high school and middle school and everything, and she passed away when I was around 21. And then that's when like I didn't have her anymore. And of course, I was still kind of developing and dealing with new things that I hadn't dealt with before. And so that's when I got lost. And, I had to kind of figure a few things out. But that's over time, I realized like not everybody had, because my mom taught me to be like emotionally aware. And, I hear the things that people say. It's like, I'm depressed and I don't know why, or people say stuff like that. And I've never had that problem. Like I always know why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. And, um, I'm not perfect or anything, but like it took me a long time just listening to other people to realize that that's a huge issue, because not everyone has a mom like mine. Like, and I wish everyone had my mom, like so that they would know. And people also learn to be very ashamed of their human emotion. I've found, like,
Of
just
course, yeah.
like you said, like, don't say you're mentally ill, don't say you're depressed, like, the kind of suck it up, but always suck it up, people too scared to cry. And I mean it goes beyond that. I mean, people will downright, it's not just people feel ashamed of their own emotions, but other people will shame you for dealing with something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's that's something that really scares me about society, actually, because I'm just like, oh my god, everyone's like emotionally repressed and they need mental health help, and they have no idea, because it's not, and I think there's a developing awareness, but a lot of times it's just a like, oh, do you feel this way? Here, call the suicide hotline, and then they read you a script, or it's like it's too basic, and people don't understand the ins and outs of like the mental health industry and all the stuff that's going on in there. Like it's that's something else that I was focusing on before I got into feminism, and I was studying psychology. Like that's kind of where my passion came from, was I wanted to like educate, I wanted people to be more aware of stuff like that. So that's another one of my like passions to talk about. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely like it's a huge issue. And I think people would find things they would be able to deal with things a lot more quickly if they had more of that awareness and there wasn't so much like repression and ignorance of it, which it just makes it worse. It just escalates problems that might not have had to have been that bad.
Oh,
Sometimes.
legitimate. I mean, the fact that we can't communicate as a species with each other properly is a huge problem. You know what I mean? Like it's the
Yeah,
breakdown
wars
of
started like
everything.
that.
Huh?
People start wars over miscommunication sometimes.
Yeah, it's just. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know why it's. 'Cause I was on a uh, on a stream the other night, and the guy that I was talking to, he was interviewing me about my feminism and whatever, and he was asking like about the breakdown of my first marriage, and I was saying how like um I was just kind of explaining the way it went, and I was like, I don't really understand how or like why this happened, right? And he was saying how like the fact is that he my ex had feelings that he was not, you know, communicating, and I was like, well, why didn't he just communicate them with me? Like, I don't like, even if that was the problem, why wasn't he saying anything? And then he was like, because he didn't trust you to be able to tell you these things. And I'm like, wow, okay, but like, how do you develop trust with a man if like everything that you've done is for the relationship, and he still doesn't trust you when you're having his kid?
Yeah.
And what do men need to be able to trust women? Like, what's missing? What's missing for men when they're growing up that they are not able to trust women? I don't
Yeah.
know. It's a weird disconnect.
Yeah, that's what's so funny is I always learned like back in like my lifespan development class actually, like you're kind of supposed to be naturally I learned a while ago that like a healthy mindset for like human beings is to kind of be generally naturally trusting. I mean, obviously you want to have your wits about you if you're like out and about, but particularly like in your everyday like relationships, like you sort of naturally have an initial trust. And so normally like, a bunch of things have to happen and then that trust is kind of broken. And I mean, as far like I've seen this with some men where like you just it's happened to me before too. Like you are genuinely there, like you put everything into the relationship, like, you know, um, and they just still are like paranoid about it. And I mean, it's just like a thing I've noticed. I don't know. Like that sounds like a him thing, you know. Um, and it's not really fair. But I mean, normally if someone's being distrustful and you are being genuine and they don't really have any reason to distrust you, then it's normally a sign of like projection, like they have something going on within them, you know? Um, but I've seen that. I had a boyfriend like that where, he just never really fully trusted me or like believed where I was coming from, even though like I genuinely was there and like loved him and just wanted it to work. Um, but yeah, that's a something for sure.
Yeah, it's weird to see that level of like insecurity within themselves projected onto a person who is genuine. You know what I mean? Like how they can twist reality to see someone as their actual honest projection of themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of the manosphere, to be honest. I mean, that's because that's what it, and like everything that this one manosphere guy complained to me about and suspected me of, he ended up doing to me in so many ways. Like it, and it's just kind of yeah, it is a giant projection, and a lot of them are really insecure, and it's like sometimes it really is like it's just because they had a bunch of bad Tinder dates or something. You know what I mean? Like I understand being a little like frustrated if you've had like a bad time dating, but that's when you take a break. You don't go out and like project that onto people and just make claims about half the population based on your Tinder dates. Like it's just a
Yeah,
lot.
or just like don't put so much importance on your Tinder dates. Do you know what I mean? Like if it was a marriage and you know what I mean, you lost a lot of stuff and like I don't know, maybe then I can understand why you would be so obsessed about talking about this. But like a Tinder date, like one date, like what, dude? Like you don't have anything better to talk about? You don't have anything more important, more relevant in your life than one time this one person didn't do what you wanted them to do? Like you're that privileged?
Yeah. Yeah, or it's just they're
Wow.
like a jerk and they aren't even talking about a real date. They're just talking about the messages they got on Tinder or something. Like there's
I
there's a
can't
lot.
even, I don't, okay, listen, oh, wow. Okay. Dating websites, because when I was younger, there wasn't dating apps, there was websites. Um, those I have received some of the nastiest messages on those websites as a young girl. Ask me why I felt the need to be on a dating website, but whatever. If I was ever had like on a website like that, I would receive messages from men, and if I did not like give them what they wanted and tell them yes, I want to go on a date with you, I would be ripped to literal shreds. I became the devil and they were entitled to tell me I was every terrible thing they could ever possibly imagine because I rejected them. So like
Yeah.
I don't really know what their messages on Tinder could be so bad compared to like what they have sent
Yeah.
to women who reject.
There's that, and then I mean the I've had that, and also like now with the apps, like you can specify like what you're looking for. And I mean I haven't done online dating in a while, but I mean I never was on there to like hook up because I can just go to a bar and do that, like, and so like that was specified, but then like every time I would, they would normally message, like sometimes not even say hey, and they would be immediately like overtly like grossly sexual, like immediately,
Oh
um
yeah, that too.
yeah, and that I had more of a problem with that than, guys kind of ripping me apart for like saying no. Sometimes guys would just the first message they send me, like they're telling me their entire life story and about their ex-girlfriend and like I mean just all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Um so but yeah, I mean not something I do anymore, not something I would ever do again.
No, avoid at all costs. There's a whole bunch of insecurity floating around on there and projecting itself as misogyny.
I know. Well, that's where a lot of them end up. I mean, I think the pattern I've noticed, I mean, it's clear to me with just the way these guys are and their personalities, like the sexist manosphere men, like it's very clear to me that they've always been like this. And so, they had to go to online dating, I mean, a lot of people just do online dating because it's the thing to do, but they like had to. And then of course they just, they have their profile, they can like manifest all of it, and of course they're gonna get rejected. Of course they're gonna have issues. I mean, if they're gonna be like at the very least like emotionally and psychologically abusive, so or just sexist. you know, like there's actually a great Instagram called Tinder Translator. Have you ever seen it?
No, because I got banned from Instagram.
Oh my God. Well, I want to hear. Can you tell me what happened?
Well, no, nothing. I didn't really do anything. It's just my account was mass reported because of that KG video.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. Yeah. Well, Tinder Translators is like the funniest friggin' so they basically take these guys' Tinder profiles who are clear like misogynist, sexist, and they translate them, right? So, you know, a lot of these guys will be like, I'm looking for a girl who's a virgin, and you know, or like, you know, like something like that's their introduction, you know, and like then they'll translate it to like, I'm an unemployed loser who feels entitled to, you know, it's kind of funny. It's just Tinder Translators. It's run by I think a British woman or an English woman. Um,
British women are fucking hilarious. So are Australian women.
I know. I mean, I always get a little like, you know, I want to see more like American feminists kind of go at it with the gusto that some of the British feminists I see do, you know, because sometimes they're just more overt.
Yeah. They're just clear about what they want to say, and it's fucking amazing. I love it.
Yeah, they're more radical. I don't know, like there's very few I don't even know of really any mainstream, like big famous, like you get featured American feminists. I think maybe, what's her name, Catherine, somebody, um, that sort of talk like that and get on the news networks. But then again, like you know, they all seem pretty neoliberal, you know,
Yeah.
uh, which is unfortunate.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna end off on that. It was nice chatting with you, my love.
I know, I love you, and your kids are so cute, even though she was
Aw,
sad.
thanks. I know they're little interruptions, but they're very sweet little babies. So I'm lucky.
So, like, I heard you like cooing her and stuff. And I was like, oh, baby.
Mom life. Come back anytime. Anytime you want to have a conversation, anytime you want to use our platform, anytime you have something to say, you are always welcome at a woman's podcast. We love you, Em Dee.
I love you too.
Thanks so much. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.